Now we're moving to item 9.1, and this is a presentation on the Moncton Downtown Events Center, and it is a public update, and I believe Mr. McDonald, our engineer, General Manager of Engineering and Environmental Services, is going to kick off the presentation, and there are a number of components, but Jack is going to lead us off on this. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Barb. Good evening, Madam Mattis and members of council. Staff have been to council on a number of occasions throughout the construction, pre-construction, discussion on finances, etc. Many meetings. There's been some information that's been sent out to the public, but tonight what we decided we would like to do is to provide a very comprehensive overview of the project. It has several elements to it. It's about a 45 to a 1 hour presentation. A presentation that long, I don't think you guys want to listen to me for an hour, and certainly I don't want to stand here and talk for an hour. So we decided we're going to do some tag teaming. There's going to be a few of us that come up and talk. So basically what we want to talk about tonight is to go right back to even the concept of why a center. Kevin Siliker will be providing some commentary on that. And then we'll have a discussion on the financials of the project, where we are, where we came from. Of course, John, our Chief Financial Officer, will be doing that. Then I'll provide a little bit of an overview on the project itself, what it will look like when it's done. And the project here tonight is not just the downtown center, but the plaza as well. And let's begin. So, I believe I just touched this thing. So for this part, why a center, I would ask Kevin to come up. Kevin is our Director of Economic Development. I'll turn it over to you. Where is Kevin? What's that?
Well, Jason, you want to start?
You are looking for him. Well, I suppose if he's not here, we can go to the next section and come back. But I think what we'll have to do is bring this thing down so we can flip to the slides. Yeah, I'll do this. Well, a bit more. Well, there you go. So great presentation, Kevin, wherever you are. Anyways, we'll come back to Kevin. Hopefully he'll be here after John. So John, if you want to maybe start the financial overview, we'll start with that. I'll take that back.
Good evening, Your Worship and councillors. My presentation tonight, as Jack indicated, I'm going to take a few minutes in order to provide you with the current financial overview of the Downtown Centre project. As the project developed, and a lot of you will remember this, a number of capital scenarios were considered, and the final one that was approved by council was scenario 10. This is the scenario 10 that I've put up here now. This was also approved by the Capital Borrowing Board and indicated a facility affordability cap of $91,500,000, and a total land cost of $12,705,000 for total estimated project cost of $104,205,000. The $104 million capital funding model that was approved by council for the land and facility is outlined in this slide. Federal and provincial replacement funding and direct funding total $43 million. Fundraising campaign is planned to bring in $5 million to the project. Sale of ancillary land are anticipated to provide another $3.5 million. Our major project reserve will contribute over $13 million. This reserve has been developed from the casino property tax and a 10% saving on the CRPA contract. After considering these funding sources, the net debt that is related to the downtown center is $39 million. This has been approved by the Capital Borrowing Board and will be borrowed in time to make the substantial completion payment. As this funding is of a long-term nature, the repayment plan is currently planned to be over 30 years. As part of the contract negotiations, SMG as operator has committed to an annual payment to the city. For the first 5 years, this payment is expected to be $325,000 per year approximately. We will use this recovery to help fund operating costs such as property tax, insurance, snow clearing, and other costs. Consequently, it is anticipated that the net operating income of the downtown center will break even before projected net debt cost of $2.8 million and life cycle cost of $954,000. One thing that I don't have here, but I'll just say it right now, and remind council, especially some of the newer councilors, SMG, of course, will take responsibility for all the events and activities within the center. And they've also said that that's not going to be a cost to us. That'll be on their tab. So with this contribution to some of the direct operating costs, it makes it gives us a good start moving into that project. So I talked about the $2 million in debt cost and life cycle cost of $954,000. So these costs are approximately $3.8 million and will be funded from DMCI contributions of $250,000 per year for 15 years, and from our major project reserve of $3.5 million per year, funded from the casino property tax and CRPA recovery that I spoke about a few minutes ago, and also. We're anticipating $811,000, yes, from ancillary land development, another downtown development that will be directed toward paying the debt and life cycle. Now, from the plaza's perspective, they're expected to have operating costs, preliminary projections, of course, but what we know today, or what we expect today, is operating costs of approximately $470,000. And that'll be primarily for maintenance and other operating costs of $250,000, event programming of $140,000, and a contingency of $80,000 to cover any other expenses that haven't been considered there. Estimated debt and life cycle cost will total approximately $206,000 for total cost of operation of approximately $676,000. The next three slides will compare the current projected cost to the original projected cost and identify the variances that we've encountered. The original projected cost, as I mentioned, land and facility was $104 million, and we had a funding plan of $104 million. Consequently, at that time, the project was considered fully funded. The current projected total cost of the project is approximately $113 million and still has the same funding plan at this point. So we're facing a projected overspend of approximately $8.8 million. What I want to do is take a couple of minutes and explain those to you. And of course, in the bi-monthly presentations that we've done, we've been bringing some of this stuff forward. So this is just an update as far as where we are. So I'm hoping a lot of this is things that council's aware of. So it's a result of changes and amendments to the project. For example, increased land cost of $579,000 related to cost incurred for soil remediation and the removal of a foundation wall. Current plaza cost of $4.3 million were not previously identified. The benefactor contributor of $1 million is expected towards the development of the plaza. And from the facility perspective, some soil mitigation cost of $2.1 million and other infrastructure cost of $2.7 million to bring the total current variance to 8.7. All these costs were approved by council, and I just wanted to demonstrate when to help remind you. The CBRE Consulting Project Management $1 million was approved on October 13th, 2015. Additional professional services for Deloitte, Blake's, and Price Waterhouse were approved by council at various times between 2013 and 2015. And final approval of overspends was on April 7th, 2015. The additional contingency request of $7.2 million was to cover the plaza, other infrastructure, and related costs identified, and this contingency was approved by council on March 18th, 2016. This variance, one of the things, of course, that we would take responsibility for would be coming up with funding recommendations, how we're actually going to pay for it, and that's what we've done here. And these are recommendations, obviously waiting for council's input or question or debate or whatever we need. But this, we're basically presenting a schedule here that would cover the cost. There's $340,000 to be recovered from a foundation claim. $629,000, pretty well $630,000 will be recovered from Bird as a plaza credit. We have $2.5 million we're proposing to be covered from capital reserves, which we have the money. And the balance of $5.2 million would be added to the capital budget and debt financed. So we have an option there, council has an option there, excuse me, that can be as an increase to the capital budget, or can ask for reallocation of the capital budget, which wouldn't change our normal plan. That's something we'll have to discuss in more detail. So take a few minutes now to highlight the key capital and operating risks that could have the potential of further impacting our capital and operating cost as the project winds down. For example, on the capital side, any additional variances to items included in the current budget would create the need for additional capital funding. As I say, we're pretty well tapped out, other than those things we talked about. So council will have to, and they do anyway, of course, approve all the changes. I just want to alert you that we should be talking each time there is a change to make sure that there is a funding for what the plan is, and it's still council's decision then what happens. Similarly, any additional capital amendments and changes to items not included in the current budget, so that would be new items that would come forward, could also create the need for additional capital funding. Some examples would be additional costs for the plaza, additional costs for the Wall of Fame, or additional costs for public art. These are all things that are getting off the ground now, and it's an opportunity for council to recognize that changes in the original proposals would create requirement for additional cash. There's also an additional, there's also a transportation dispersal plan that's been worked on. There is a budget for that, and if there's any additional cost required, that also could affect operating. Yes, okay, thank you. We will also need to monitor additional land remediation cost. Now, in this case, we currently have a budget estimate of $340,000 for this project, and so far we've only spent $210,000. So there is some money there that we'll keep an eye on, and that's where we would recommend leaving it, because it's likely that we may run into some additional costs there. On the funding side, many shortfalls in our predicted capital revenue streams will need to be covered by alternative methods. For example, we're budgeting $5 million in funding from the fundraising campaign and $3.5 million recovered from the sale of ancillary lands. We also have a small amount of accounts receivable that we're collecting. Any variance from what is budget will create a funding shortfall that the city will be required to cover. That, again, same as in other situations, could mean extra debt or even possibly an increase in the tax rate, depending on the magnitude. There are also risks on the operating side. For example, we do not have anything at this point budgeted in case we needed any additional professional fees after the facility is completed. That would have to be a separate project, and I would recommend that council would see that as almost like a new project, because that would be post-build. Our contract calls for recovery of pre-opening cost of $1.5 million from the operator. Any cost in excess of that amount or reduction in the recovery will be our responsibility. Sorry. Oh. Okay, I've got one more slide. No, two more slides. I'm sorry, I jumped ahead there. Another example would be operating costs not identified or included in the budget for the plaza, the Wall of Fame, or public art. And final example would be operating costs that were not identified for the plaza, the Wall of Fame, or public art. And to finish, I'm just going to say, Your Worship, this concludes my current financial overview of the downtown center. I hope council's not surprised. I'm hoping there's a lot of things there that they've recognized, and I say we're always willing to meet, to discuss, and look at options. Generally, project, as everyone knows, is a beautiful project. It's coming together really well, and I think when we look at the overrun, the fact that council's approved it, the fact that it's funded, takes a lot of the sting out of that. The trick now is running on the home run alley is when we really need to stay focused on any additional costs, because that would take some more thinking. So that's my highlights, and I'm going to turn it over to Jack now to talk about this section. Thank you.
Okay, Shane, Barb, who's ever flipping the machine here, can you go back to the beginning of the presentation?
The beginning of the presentation.
So, bring it right there, yeah. So Kevin has entered the building. So anyways, we'll put Kevin to work here. So Kevin's going to come and give us a little bit of a discussion on why the center. And as I mentioned, Kevin is our Director of Economic Development. So over to you, Kevin.
My apology for that Where's Waldo moment. I was upstairs working on another file. Alors, why a center? Pourquoi un centre multifonctionnel?
Why a multifunctional center?
The project was always centered around two goals. The Mayor's Task Force report in 2010 identified and described those goals well. Namely, the Mayor's Task Force recognized the Downtown Center project was focusing on achieving downtown revitalization, building the foundation for the next era of downtown growth, and a replacement for the aging Moncton Coliseum. Ce projet stratégique représente
This strategic project represents an important partnership and public-private investment and constitutes the basis of our strategy to reinforce the core of our downtown and to make sure that the reputation of Moncton as a capital, sports capital, is disseminated everywhere. So the objective is to benefit from the downtown center, to launch the revitalization of this downtown center, and also to replace the Coliseum.
all great cities have a great downtown. Moncton is a great city, but our downtown does not live up to our city's greatness and reputation. We need to focus on our downtown and make it great. It's the heart and soul of our community, and we must make it better. The city's downtown center revitalization objective is all about bringing more vitality, more density, and more people enjoying working and living in the downtown. On a besoin d'activités pendant la journée, mais
We need daily activities, but also we need activities downtown during the evenings also.
needs more people, both during the daytime, but also during evenings. And density is important as well. Presently, approximately 42% of the downtown core is utilized for surface parking, compared with 15% in the overall downtown BIA. This is a staggering figure which negatively impacts the downtown from a revenue perspective, but also it impacts the walkability, density, and user experience of downtown. Compare Moncton's downtown grid and surface usage with other cities. Consider Halifax's well-defined grid and built density. Downtown Halifax has a reputation as being a vibrant, dynamic, and walkable downtown. From this aerial photo, you can appreciate the well-developed core of downtown Halifax. Charlottetown is another great example of a well-planned grid with an abundance of mixed-use residential, commercial, entertainment, and retail options. Downtown is a significant part of a city's identity and reputation, but downtowns also factor into a community's fiscal well-being and sustainability. Dans le cas de Moncton, le centre-ville
Downtown in Moncton is just 5% of the area of Moncton, but generates more than 14.4% of the property tax revenue.
land area, but generates over 14.4% of property tax revenues. As well, downtown generates nearly 11.5 times as much property tax revenue compared to the rest of the city on a per hectare basis. Le centre-ville génère près de 11.
Downtown generates nearly 11.5% as times as much property tax revenue compared to the rest of Moncton on a per hectare basis.
For the city. the city relies on downtown property tax revenues to pay for neighborhood parks, trails, plus roads and other infrastructure and city services. There are a number of well-built-out and dense blocks in our downtown. The Blue Cross Building, the National Bank block would be very good examples. These buildings and properties generate over $100 per square foot and some more than $200 per square foot of assessed value. However, there are many downtown properties which are assessed at less than $25 per square foot. This is not good for property owners, it's not good for the downtown, and it's not good for the rest of the city. We want to see properties which are better developed, which yield more return for the landowners and bring more value into the downtown. On veut attirer au centre-ville.
We want to attract downtown people, and there are great possibilities for projects to improve lands downtown in a general sense.
Some examples of projects which have begun in our community, in our downtown over the last short period. Seb showed the video earlier this evening about some of the downtown successes. We hope to write more of those stories, but these are some of the ones that our downtown is currently experiencing. 840 Main Street is very well documented as having been vacant and boarded up in the core of our downtown for over a decade, and now we have new investors who have come and made that investment to be a part of our downtown success story. 171 Lute Street, formerly the Tuttle Brothers building, also acquired and newly renovated, 30,000 square foot office complex with the ground level now fully occupied. 803 Main Street as well, a new acquisition has changed hands in our downtown, and you've seen an amazing transformation of this historic and heritage property in our downtown core. The Junction is well underway with one project already under construction and two more planned in the near vicinity. It's about a $45 million project based on the developer's current phasing and planning. 55 Queen Street is now under construction, and it's the first crane in the sky, of course, since the downtown center, but previous to that, the Marriott and the courthouse. These 5 projects alone, these examples, total $25.9 million worth of building permits and approximately $194,000 in permit fee revenues to the city of Moncton. I just want to show downtown building permits over the last number of years. And you can see 2010 through 2012, permits in the downtown alone averaged about $20 million a year. There was a drop off in 2013, 14, and 15. 13 at 8.1 million, 14 at 6.6 million, and 10.7 million in 2015. 2016 demonstrates the red here is with the downtown center building permit. The green is not including the downtown center building permit. What's most interesting is that in the last 6 months, downtown building permits have totaled over $35 million in the last 6 months alone. And again, compared to the last number of years where the most was about $20 million in that 2010 to 2012 range. So there have already been impacts of the downtown center felt in our community at $35 million worth of new building permits in the last 6 months alone. So I'll close off my presentation there and pass the parole. Merci. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm going to take the next piece, and by the way, I forgot to mention at the beginning that I prefer to hold questions till the end, so the end is in sight. Okay, next slide. You want to bring that one up? Good. Okay, I apologize for the busyness of this slide. There's quite a few things on here that I want to talk about. So this basically we'll talk about. We'll start at the land level and work our way up. So we bought the land for the project in around 2014, I believe. And as John mentioned his discussion, the land all in is at $12.7 million. On this piece of land, which is bounded to the south by CN Tracks, to the north by Main Street, and to the west by the Crombie, Gates, Stovey's complex, are five parcels. Two of the parcels I want to explore a little bit further tonight, which is the event center and the public square, the plaza. The other three we're not going to talk about tonight, except to say that they are development plazas. We refer to them as parcel A, B, and C. Parcel B right now, which is the largest parcel to the east, is presently out for sale through an RFP. Parcel A, at some point in the future, and parcel C, which is, you'll see a picture of in terms of our vision of what will eventually happen on parcel C, will be some kind of a, probably a lease, long-term lease arrangement with some kind of owner that will provide a facility that's complementary to the plaza area. In the, as you see the event center, no, can we go back? So the event center is a fixed price contract at $91.5 million. Contract is a DBO, design, build, operate, with a GMP, a guaranteed maximum price. That price will not change unless we change the scope. We have not had any scope change at this point. We have no intention of having any scope change until the end of the project. So for all intents and purposes, when the project is complete, as per contract, that is July 2018, when we have substantial completion, that will be the price of the facility. If we move over to the blue section there, you can see I'm adding up, I split it into two pieces. I talk about the base price, which includes the building at $91.5 million and the land at $12.5 million, for a total of $104.2 million, which is a number that John has previously discussed, council has seen many times. That number is fixed. Once again, the two components being fixed. The contingency amount, just a quick discussion on that, $7.2 million. When the PA was put together for building the building and the project was basically underway, that's when I became involved. I started looking at it and realized that there was a few pieces in there that maybe were not initially contemplated within the plaza, the PA. So I went to council March 2016 and basically requested that we put additional funds in to accommodate some of the things that weren't fully realized during the PA, which was primarily focused on the building. So two of the big components there is the plaza itself, which we now know is going to come in roughly around $4.3 million, and the UDS, which is the underground detention system, which I'll talk about a little bit more as we get further into this, is coming in at about $2 million, and you'll have about $0.9 million for other pieces. So just a few of the other pieces. The CN land is a brownfield. It was a fully operational component of the CN operation for close to a decade. So there's no surprising that the land there is impacted. So part of the requirements of doing the downtown center is we do have chemicals that are in the ground that are left over from the old CN days. One of them is VOCs, volatile organic carbon, which basically it can be in a liquid form or vaporous form. So in order to get approval to build the downtown center, we had to put a vapor mitigation system in. This was, although we speculated we would have environmental impacts associated with the lands during the PA, we didn't know what they would be. So we do know what they are now, and as a consequence, we have engaged a professional consultant that specializes in this area. Plus, we've done some work, or will do some work, and that bills at roughly about $420,000. Also included in here, we're going to loop the water system. If any of you have heard me talk over the years, looping is a good thing from a water quality point of view. So we are actually part of this contract extending the water service right from Maine and tying onto the water system that's in the Crombie property that eventually hooks onto Vaughan Harvey. So that will provide us with a water loop. As well, we have to extend sanitary and storm sewer systems up to service parcels B and parcel A. It's preferable to do that now before we put a brand new road in and have to tear the road up. So that actually constitutes some more money. We've also got some pieces like the public art piece. It's about $200,000. We had some minor stuff in there for embellishing the lights on the building at night. We also had to hire a mechanical electrical consultant to help us with the design. This is, as I mentioned, is a DBO, design, build, operate, so it actually was design as you go. So we hired consultants to protect our interest. There's no mechanical, electrical experts within city staff, so we farmed that out. And that same mechanical electrical consultant firm will be providing us with expertise associated with the commissioning of the facility. Next slide, please. On to the building. So if anybody's driven by the building, it's almost kind of looks like the picture you see in front of you, minus the work on the sidewalk, et cetera. So certainly from the exterior of the building, we're well on our way. We're not 100% complete. There's work to be done on mullions and some more tile work, et cetera, to be done. But the bulk of the work today goes on inside the building. So today, if you were to go on site, there's about between 150 to 200 tradespeople that are working inside of that building. What you would expect, you've got mechanical, electrical trades, ventilation, you've got painting, gyprock, concrete people, the list just goes on. So it's a beehive of activities inside the building. I will say that with respect to the schedule for the building, we're on budget and we're on schedule. Next slide, please. So let's move to the inside of the building. This building, when it's complete, will be a world-class facility. This is a view of the main entrance. If you were to stay on the ground floor there and continue to walk forward, you would enter at the ice surface. So there'd be seating, of course, at the ice surface and moving up. So for those that are sitting in the lower bowl area, that would be your entrance. For people that are going to the concourse or whatever, you'd be either taking the stairs or the escalator. Next slide, please. So if you were to go to the concourse level and step off, this is the view that you will behold. So this building is a multifunctional building, sports and entertainment. So under this configuration, of course, it's set up for hockey. The other takeaway from this slide is you notice that the seats the seat color has been set. It'll be a matrix of what you see in front of you, which is red, black, and gray. Next slide, please. So from a minor amount of work, you can switch from hockey, take down the boards, put down a floor, insulated floor matting type of arrangement, and flip it into a basketball mode. So as you can see here, we're now in basketball mode. Next slide, please. So this slide, I apologize that we didn't get around to, no, too fast. We didn't get around to getting the same colored chair rendering in there. But this is the setup for a concert. It can be set up in two different ways. This particular way, you would haul the basically the back end of the bowl. The bottom seats collapse into the wall and allows you to put a vertical stage in. So that's exactly what's happened here. Is the back of the house has been draped and a stage set up. So this is a concert configuration. There's also another configuration where you can put a stage in the middle. And for that event, you would also have the use of the bowl, the seating in the back. That is, in this particular case, has been stored. Next slide, please. So within the facility, there are 13 club suites, of which this is a picture. So if you in clubs, basically club areas will be sold on an annual basis. To people that want to have their own private facilities. So there's 13 of those, and there's also 3, I believe, what we refer to as party suites. Basically, for all intents and purposes, they're pretty much what you see in front of you. They're a club type of suite. They're open to the public for rent, except they're bigger. They're probably about twice the size of what you see in front of you. Next slide, please. Facility also has a, just a little fast on the button. Facility also has a lounge area that's attached to the club seating area. This lounge area actually is going to have a fantastic view of the plaza. In fact, on the left, you can see that there's glass here, or sorry, on the right. There'll also be, from here, you'll also be able to go out onto some patios that are just outside at the same elevation, so you're a couple stories in the air, but very nice patio setup. Next slide, please. So now we're going to go in and talk about components of the plaza. So before we talk about the plaza, we are in the process presently of building an underground detention storage system. So just a little bit about the underground detention system. So first off on the whys. So as a result of climate change and our wish to deal with mitigating what we saw as the effects of climate change with respect to stormwater stormwater systems throughout the city. I'm talking about basically basement flooding. City in 2011 introduced a zero, I want to get this right, zero net post-construction stormwater runoff policy as part of our commercial guidelines. We've since adopted it for subdivision as well. And so what that requires is it requires anybody who's developing a site, such as us, to basically retain, capture and impound and retain water and release it at the same rate that that land would have released it at if the land had remained forested. So you can realize that if you're dealing with a piece of forested land and it rains, a rainstorm is impressed on that forested land, there's a lot of absorption goes on, and the water eventually gets to streams and whatever, but through a very, very slow process. To mimic that, you have various options. The option that was looked at and proposed by Projectco, which is a conglomerate that we are now dealing with to build this, was 2 detention ponds. So we took a look at it and we said, well, you know, in terms of the character of what you're building here, which is a world-class facility, a world-class plaza, it's not keeping in tune with that vision. Aesthetically, these are not pleasing. These would be dry, static ponds. They're not very nice things to look at. You have to maintain them. So we took a look at it and we said, all right, what happens if we were to store, like big cities do, the water underground? So by doing that, that parcel on the right there on the parcel B side, or the detention pond that you see on the parcel B side, that would take about 20% of that land. So as I mentioned before, we're selling that land. So if you took 20% of that land back, you're taking the potential for building, you're reducing that by 20%. You're potentially affecting the cost of the land. They're going to have to build something with basically 20% of the land missing. So it would end up compromising what a developer could build there. So with that in mind, plus the issue that if you do go and leave those ponds there, that the land is basically, for all intents and purposes, lost from a taxation point of view, you're losing taxes. So from that perspective, we were to council sometime last year, latter part of last year, and requested that we consider eliminating the detention ponds and moving to an underground. So very, very easy, simple process, and voila, you have underground storage. So we've moved forward with that. This slide was taken last week. As you can see, this slide represents about 40% of the underground detention system in place. That system will be finished and ready to receive the plaza by, I would think, the end of the month, possibly mid-June at the latest. So all things being said, project's moving along quite well. So now let's get into the public plaza consultation. So I'm going to turn this over to Isabel, who was part of this process. And what Isabel is going to walk us through is the process that kind of explains how we took what was originally part of the PA, a very vanilla solution for the plaza, and moved it into what we are now going to be building as a world-class, high-end plaza. Over to you, Isabel.
Merci, Jack and Madame la Mairesse.
Thank you, Jack, Your Worship, councillors, good evening. Before I begin,
Those renderings that you saw of the red, black, and gray seats and suites, those are brand new. It's the first time that we've shown them, so we'll be starting to push them out through social media. We're very excited about them. We think that they're absolutely great. The ones that were a bit in the beige color, unfortunately, we couldn't get renderings for every scenario, but we're very, very pleased to see that basketball setup, the hockey setup, the lounge, and you'll see them on social media very, very soon, and possibly on some signage as well, because we have some plans going on for that. So, I am going to take us back a little bit. Il y a quelques années, donc il y a...
a few years ago, 2 years now, when we saw the proposal of Bird Construction and their consortium.
Basic layout for a plaza. It looked just about like this. So a lot of concrete, large concrete slab, some concrete pavers, and a few trees. But it was pretty basic at that time. So, because we knew that this was going to be a destination and a signature piece for our city, this entire project, the plaza, the ancillary lands, the downtown center, we felt that a bit more could be done, certainly to make it a space that would make residents proud, that would make residents want to go, gather, celebrate, have fun, either before a game or a concert or just at any given time. So we all knew that we had but one chance to plan this correctly. And so a recommendation was made and accepted by council to organize a public consultation, which is great because more and more we talk about resident engagement and citizen engagement, and is certainly an important part of the previous council and certainly your council as well. So the goal was to reimagine the plaza space as a gathering space, as a multi-purpose area for the entire community. A place where events and activities could be held year-round, and Sébastien Arcan will like this, but a true urban space, one that we can all certainly be very, very proud of, and that will match his video that we saw earlier tonight. So on December 2nd, 2015, I'm taking you back, and I have no intention of having you read this. I know that it's a full slide, and it's done so with purpose. But on December 2nd, 2015, we had our ideas workshop here at City Hall. Many of you, or some of you, were there. Donc, on a accueilli notre atelier.
We had a workshop here at City Hall. It was an evening with workshops on different themes, the public art programming, the building, the plaza. A series of themes were discussed.
Residents were asked to imagine how they saw themselves in this specific space, in this plaza space, and the types of activities and amenities and other things that they would like to see and do within that space year-round, not just summer, but year-round. So the end result of this ideas workshop was what you can see here, and what you can see in the following slide is a very long list of ideas, suggestions, features, components, anything you can imagine is certainly contained in here. What you're seeing here are the ones that pertain to that space uniquely. We didn't add the ones that pertain to the building. So the sense that we got from residents who were there and residents who sent us either an email or contacted us through our website or social media is that they were very pleased that the city asked residents to participate. We seldom do that, and I think that they were very happy that we asked for their opinion, their suggestions, their ideas on how to make this space a destination. And we don't do that often, so it's great. So again, I know you can't see there. I'm going to have a few French slides just repeating it. But I just do want to sum up a couple of the ideas, general ideas that came out of that session. And these, what you see here, is exactly what you saw 3 days after the ideas workshop. We pushed that out on our website, on social media. You all got a copy of it, just a different look. It is still available on our website. Donc, si vous voulez voir la longue liste d'idées qui est ressortie de cette session-là, dirigez-vous vers le site web.
You can visit our website to see the list of all these ideas that we have. If you can't find it, just ask us.
Where they could walk down Main Street during a beautiful summer, spring, fall day with their lunch, sit down, meet up with some friends, have lunch, spend some time. They wanted a creative space where artists could be inspired to create new pieces of work or new pieces of art. Parents wanted to be able to bring their children to either play in that back area, to perhaps listen to some music, to play a little bit of, I don't know, basketball, frisbee. Nothing was determined at that time. A place where people could simply, maybe they would participate in a festival because something was going on. Maybe there were some buskers. Maybe there were some food vendors. But they wanted to be able to go in at any given time and have some programming going on. Les gens cherchaient où on signalait.
people said they wanted a place where there would be chairs, tables that could be moved around the site one way or another, because in large cities, that's what they see. A place where people can put 2 or 3 chairs together with friends, meet other people, eat, or whatever. So it was important for them to have a space where they could just sit. That would be there always, but that could be moved. They wanted a place where you could rent bikes, skates, ice skates in the winter too. A place where they could rent stuff like this. A multi-purpose center where they could play basketball or soccer. Might be a little bit difficult, but since we were near the complex, people were talking about a skating rink and green spaces. Because in our downtown, we don't have a whole lot of green spaces, so people wanted to have access to that space during the day as well as night.
Of all these ideas, and we threw that back to the landscape architect who took all of those ideas, suggestions into consideration and designed something based on what residents had indicated was important to them and what they wanted to see. Donc l'inspiration de la version que l'on voit aujourd'hui, qui a été adoptée il y a 2 ans.
So we adopted this 2 weeks ago, and that comes from the comments of the citizens that gave us their vision and their ideas.
Size of public consultation enabled our residents to imagine a space in the heart of our city that conjures up thoughts of summer cafe crowds, 3-on-3 basketball games in the Oval, afternoon concerts, outdoor performances, ice skating under the stars, getting bundled up for a stroll before a game or a show at the downtown center, going to a holiday market, or warming up near the fire pit. A space for everyone all year long. Ils ont vraiment visionné grand.
They imagine a space for everybody and all year round as well. So that is it. And so I give the mic to my colleague, Jack, once again.
In terms of my introductions of Isabelle, I should have mentioned this. Isabelle LeBlanc, she's the Director of Corporate Communications. So, all right, so we're on the home run here, at least in terms of me. So we're just going to show a few slides on what we can expect for the plaza itself. So as you see with the sort of top-down overview here, much like that land parcel split into a bunch of components, so is the plaza split into a bunch of components, and our resident landscape architect is going to go through a fly-through here shortly. So I'm going to keep my comments short, but just on this, you'll see there's the Main Street Cafe. I want to point out that will not be part of the plaza. That's what we refer to as Parcel C. That will be done separately from the plaza. There will be definitely space left for it, but the idea there is at some point we will engage with an entrepreneur to build and provide a facility there that's complementary to the plaza. Adjacent to the plaza is that bistro area that Isabelle was mentioning. Beside that, as we move south towards the railway tracks, which is not in the scene, but that nice green space to the left would be the railway tracks, is the stage. It's shown here as square. You'll see in a minute, in fact, it turned out to be oval. Then we move into the event oval, which is where you see a bunch of people gathered there. It looks like they're doing a concert. And in the back of that, we get into the sort of the park, treed, greened area. So very, very quickly, we'll go through the components. So this is the stage. The stage, when it's built, you can see it's basically not a lot. It's not necessarily walled, but it's got 4 supports. It's supporting the roof. The area underneath it's about 125 square feet, square meters, or about 1,350 square feet. It's going to have power connected to it, about 200 amps. That'll be used to power speakers and lights, that type of thing. It's going to have infrastructure, as you can see there, that you'll be able to hang stuff off and attach lights, etc., speakers for concerts. It's designed for music entertainment, and if it happens to be raining and you're down there and you want to get out of the rain, it'll also help out with that. So this is a view of what we expect it to look like on a warm summer night sometime in August with some kind of a concert going on, maybe Mozart, who knows. And the facility itself will be able to accommodate that area there in front, somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500 comfortably. We move now to the oval. It'll be a cement structure. As mentioned, this is meant to be an all-season, multi-purpose, outside, activity-driven facility. So this oval during the summer will be used for doing things like concerts, which you just saw, playing basketball, maybe kicking a ball around, things, basically what kids like to do, some of us adults. And in the winter, this facility, or this surface, is going to be refrigerated. So as we're all aware, we do have a skating surface outside of City Hall at Botsford in Maine. As we're also aware, particularly in the last couple of winters, you didn't get a lot of ice time because the weather is getting milder. So with a refrigeration system to go along with this sunken oval rink, we should get a lot more ice time in terms of doing public skates outside. And this is also a view of the same thing, a little bit back from the park, and you can see the fire pit that was mentioned earlier. And then we get into the park area here. This is meant to be a neighborhood park. It will support residential as well as hotel development, so it'll be a nice place if you're staying at a local hotel to be able to go and just relax. It's also going to have an interactive education component to it, which will be discussed a little bit more as we get into the fly-through. So just a quick overview again, this is what we're looking at. Besides what you see above, there's also going to be a lot of stuff underground, and between the pavers and the underground electromechanical, just that component alone, you're looking at about $1 million. So there's a lot of stuff you don't see that carry a fair price tag. So now we're going to do a fly-through, and in order to do this, we're going to have to shut this program down for a minute and bring on another program because we ran this this afternoon, and we're having a problem with the fact that the movie is about 1 gigabyte, and it was crashing the system. So we got around that by slicing this thing into 2 parts. So I'm going to ask Jim, when this thing gets up, Jim Sackville. He's the landscape architect that was responsible for the design, as Isabel mentioned. He took the elements that came out of the public consultation process and listened to what the people had, and basically from what people wanted to see in a plaza, he developed basically what you're going to see here in a second. So Jim Sackville is the owner and principal for BDA Architects, as I say, who we contracted to come up with the plaza scheme. So over to you, Jim.
Thanks, Jack. Well, good evening, Your Worship and Council and all those gathered. This is a pretty exciting project for the city. I've been involved in working on various projects for the city for 25 odd years, and this is by far for me the most exciting piece that we've been involved in. The unique feature of this is it's not only a downtown plaza, it's also a downtown park, it's also a neighborhood park, and it is the outdoor venue for the center itself, for the event center. So we're going to have this piece of architecture that things go on inside, and outside you'll be able to feel and be part of similar types of activities. So how do we start this up? Did we just push? No, we're working on it? Okay. And to start and stop it, how do I do that? All right. Well, let's all right. All right, so maybe just back it up. Would you mind backing it up? No? Stop. Stop then. Stop. All right, that's fair enough. All right, so the first, Jack talked about this sort of street side, and Isabel also in a place for coffee. And on the right, you're seeing the what would be eventually some sort of a cafe and outdoor food vendor. And on the left, you see the event center stage, the plaza stage. And in this case, it's turned over, and it's really a pavilion, so people will sit in the shade, out of inclement weather, and use that space in that way. And straight ahead, you see the ticket space also for the event center itself. All right, we'll roll her ahead. There are people lining up getting in and gathering. We have also lots of space for bikes. You can see the bus drop-off at the front entrance. This is obviously early before a show. But the one thing that this plaza will do is be the front door, the threshold for the event center. So people will gather. So as we move down toward the bowl, the event bowl, we have a pretty unique feature around the event bowl, which are these trellis units. And they're going to provide an armature for lighting, an armature for plants, and create a great, sort of space enclosing the bowl, the event oval. And there you can see just an afternoon, kids gathering, a little basketball going on, a little ball being kicked around, people watching and sitting about the space. You can also see lighting, the larger lighting. We have a significant lighting element to the project. This now we're looking at the back of the park, the green space, the neighborhood park, the downtown, what somebody calls sort of a respite from city life. And again, more of the lighting. Bikes on the left. Again, we have some elements, some monument elements. That's the CN monument, and we've got lots of undulation, lots of grass, lots of place for people to position themselves. And then this is looking back at the oval. And you can see again how the stage works and how the spaces work. Boom, nighttime, just like that. Concert. You can see on the left the glass looking into the event center also, which is pretty interesting to view out. So this is a setup for an evening concert. Again, lots of light and the light bouncing up off the trellises. The edge of the seat, or the oval, is seat height, 18 inches, so that gives us great opportunity to have people sitting. Around the trellises, there are also benches built into the plantings. We're just flipping around, having a look at night. The front entrance, the corner park space, the bus. And just a view down at street level, so you can get a sense of the enclosure. That the trellises, they're quite transparent, but they do just give that element of enclosure, so that when you're in the space, you feel contained, and when you're driving by, you also get a sense that this is an interior special space. I'm not sure where we're going with this. I think we're just going to have a look one more time around at night. And there it is. And there it is snowing in winter, which is great. So again, year-round, it's a large space. We expect that, again, with programming, that there'll be activity there, really year-round. So there's a band playing, the snow is flying. It looks like quite a day. So also you can see on the right is some vision of what might happen on the adjacent properties. And that, as Kevin mentioned, is a key part of all of this, is that it become a catalyst for development. I think that's going to pretty well finish it right there.
So we'll cut it off there then, Jim.
Mm-hmm.
And,
I think we're good for sure.
We'll bring her back to the main presentation. So, Okay, so we're going to bring it back to the presentation. That is it for me. I will, of course, be here for questions and answers after, but there's one more piece of the presentation that we want to do. And I'd like to bring Mark Landry up, the city's new city manager, to provide his comments, his commentary, and close up the formal presentation. Over to you, Mark.
Thank you, Jack. Merci beaucoup, Jack, and
Thank you very much.
this side of the podium today. So thank you very much. Well, one of the important things on a project like this is we can say, how do we tie this back into our action plan? Ça fait que les priorités du conseil.
So the priorities of council,
As we know, this new state-of-the-art sports and entertainment center is following council priorities, goals, ce mandat ici, and as well a mandate for the future. The next slide shows our mission. So when we talk about quality of life, la qualité de vie des gens, we're looking at long-term economic growth that this project is going to be creating, and also the long-term impact on the community and the region and the province, as you're all aware. Quand on regarde à notre
when we look at our vision, we look at a city that's going to be inspiring.
inspiring residents, and I think we can see the inspiration of investors across the world that are putting Moncton as a placemaker now, and I believe this really meets the action plan that's there. When we look at the values that we have, nos valeurs, we look at accountability. An example of that is the update tonight that we're doing to public with all the financial information, all the details, our commitment to grow our community, provide the best services possible, and as well the updates qu'on fait à la communauté sur notre site.
What we do with the community on the website and the diverse aspects.
Another value we have in the action plan. And as we saw in the presentation, we're talking about the environment, the construction, the underground servicing, and the revitalization of our downtown. Ça fait que notre centre-ville, ça va être...
It's going to be very positive for the future.
I think this project demonstrates the solid leadership that this council and previous councils have taken, and it really demonstrates the momentum that and the vision that all of you have for development in our whole community. So again, it's a great example of council, our residents, and the employees of the city working together at all levels and getting a project like this that's almost finalized. L'engagement, nous parlons...
Engagement, we talk about in 2010 of the Mayor's Task Force report.
With the Plaza project, that was a good example. We know that there's additional costs associated that were not projected at the start, but I mean, this was part of the public engagement and residents were involved, so I believe that was a great example of how you engage residents. And yes, there is additional costs, but we're going to have a much better product at the end of the day. La creativity, we look at the downtown retention system that we have for the storm pond, the plaza, so involving our community groups and future programming, the innovation, so really looking at how we can think outside the box. So that's another great example. La prochaine valeur que nous...
The next value is diversity.
Newcomers in the community, one of the essential pillars is to grow our tax base, to have new residents, and this project will provide new festival events and new opportunities and activities to a whole range of residents in Moncton now, and aussi nos futurs résidents de la
and also the future residents of the community.
du
When we talk about for professionalism,
and I can tell you, being away from Moncton for about 10 years, our perception and professionalism is from across the country. Moncton is really ranked high. And this will be another opportunity to showcase that and to showcase our great focus. So this goes in line with that. The next one is our priorities. So as we know, there's 3 priorities that are set in the action plan, and we can check all of those off with this project, whether it's increasing our population and tax base, the efficiency of delivery of services, and the asset management that we've talked about in the presentation, and collaboration with the 3 levels of government. And I think that's another great item that we need to mention is we have partnerships with our 3 levels of government on this project. So they realize the importance that this is going to have, not just on the city of Moncton, not just on our region, on our province, and on the country as a whole. So those are all very positive. When we also look at our actions, nos mesures, And basically, these are all related to the quality of life. Et ce projet va avoir un impact.
So this project is going to have an important impact on residents of our community and of the region, as it was mentioned.
Slide that we have is in the action plan, we talk about Moncton is on the cup of great things. Imagine the opportunities. On va imaginer les opportunités. When we look at the statistics, $35 million of building permits in the last 6 months in the downtown. Any downtown in Canada would love having those numbers. When we're looking at the investment that's being made, and yes, we've looked at the financial model, we need to rally and be excited about this project. It's being done, and now we all have to work together on this. And this will put us on a footing as other communities across North America. We can look at the Nashvilles, the Columbus, the Edmontons, Los Angeles, Tampa, that all have a center of this magnitude in their downtown, and to see the impact it has. And it's been a change that they've all taken advantage of. And I think this is a great opportunity for our city. So it's putting us not just on the map as a city, and not just across the country, but across the world. So this is a great project. We understand that there's a lot of investment that is being made. Il y a beaucoup d'investissements.
A lot of long-term investments, but it's going to be long-term an excellent project.
Nous sommes prêts pour des
We're ready for questions,
fois pour l'opportunité.
and thank you very much for the opportunity.
Merci beaucoup, Marc, Jack.
Thank you very much, Marc, Jacques, Isabelle, Kevin, Jim.
Worked so hard on putting this together. We really appreciate this overview. First up, I have Councillor Pellerin, and he has been waiting for over an hour, I believe. Go ahead, Councillor Pellerin.
Merci, Madame la Mairesse. Thank you, everybody, for the presentation. Is it possible to get a copy of the PowerPoint? And just out of curiosity, was there a reason why council did not have a copy of that prior to this?
Yeah, yes, Councilor, there's a reason that this presentation was ongoing last week, was ongoing this weekend, was actually ongoing this morning in terms of actually finishing it up. So it's kind of one of those presentations that we just come running in with. So our apologies, but yes, we can get it to council. I think Isabel's undertaken that she's going to do that.
All right, fantastic. I do have some questions.
Actually, I think our city manager wanted to address that as well.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, Councillor Pellerin. Yes, as we mentioned, the presentation will be made available on the website. I believe that we have already provided a copy to our media resources, so they have an opportunity, and we will make sure that all elected officials. I know one of the items in the presentation was just the size of the file that was hard to work with, so we will make sure that everyone has copies
Fantastic.
of that.
I took some notes, so Mr. Martin, correct me if I'm wrong on any of these things. Just took some notes here. The yearly payment for the downtown center is going to be $3.765 million.
So, excuse me, Your Worship, and excuse me, Councillor, just get that would be the net debt cost plus the life cycle cost would be the $3.7 million.
And is that over a 30-year basis or 25 years?
That would be over 30 years.
Okay, so that also includes the $250,000 from DMCI, correct?
For 15, yes, it does.
Okay, so after year 15, do we have to add $250,000?
Or look for an alternative financing source.
Okay.
Okay.
So depending on what happens on year 16, we could be adding $250,000 to that
Potentially.
over 15 years.
Potentially.
Okay. All right, that's good. The total cost for the plaza, since we're taking care of the operational costs, and I know that there's fiscal costs in there, is $676,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
I suspect as the years go by, as the cost of materials go up and maintenance and everything else, that's going to be a variable cost. It's not going to be a fixed cost for 676, is it?
No, it wouldn't be a fixed cost, and it would have variability built into it. But of course, we'd also, I'm sure what'll happen is there'll also be revenue opportunities identified that haven't yet been identified.
Right. Okay, but just the cost itself?
Cost itself will escalate somewhat, I agree with you.
Okay, so obviously it could be 3-4%, we don't know, depending on what's going on. All right. So if I do that, so the total borrowing as proposed, which I know council has not approved, is $39 million plus $4.3 million. Is that correct?
Just 1 second, Councillor, I'll catch up with you. Thank you, Barb.
And like I said, since I don't have your
That's
PowerPoint,
fine.
it's difficult for me, so I was just taking some notes.
Okay, thank you. Could you give me the question again, please?
Yes, so the 676 and the 3.765 million, so basically the total cost per year is going to be ballpark about $4.4 million.
Yes.
And that's over 30 years, correct?
Yes.
Of course, that's average. Again, the 676 could grow depending, we'll see. So, and what's going to be our total borrowing if council approves what you had proposed, taking some money out of the operational reserve? It's going to be 39 million,
39 million would be the net borrowing.
right? And there would also be like, what is it, 4.3?
Just a second. Excuse me for a second, Your Worship. Well.
Actually, it's 5.2. It's on page
Okay, on
16.
that slide, now that slide is the funding of the 8.773.
Right, so,
Yes, that's, okay.
all right, so but if we were to follow that, we would be adding I'm going to round it up to $5.3 million on top of the 39 million?
Yes, we would. However, Your Worship, I also indicated that council would have the option of instructing staff to find it within the capital budget.
Right,
So other projects may be moved or delayed or whatever.
okay. So maybe moved, all right. So the reason why I'm asking, I'm just doing a quick calculation. So let's just say we go with that option. So let's say $44 million. 44.3, so if we take 4.4 times 30 years, including interest, we're going to be spending $132 million for that borrow. That's going to be capital plus interest.
It's possible. I haven't done the math on that, but I'd certainly be happy to do it.
Like I said, all it took was the 4.4 times 30. Okay, so $132 million, all right?
That makes sense, yes.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Thank you.
You had mentioned in your slide the $811,000 dedicated
Yes.
property tax.
Yes.
If I recall correctly, that was based on, I think, $83 million worth of development downtown as part of the payback for the capital and interest on the downtown center.
Well, this, actually, Your Worship, this part of the project is Mo's department, and Kevin's been working away at it, so
Right.
you guys may want to respond to that.
The $811,000, according to the slide, the dedicated property tax, comes from the new development in and around the downtown center.
Correct.
If I recall, going from 2015.
It excludes the ancillary land, though.
Right, but we needed ballpark $83 million.
Correct.
In which case, so far, we've got 35.5?
Correct.
Okay. So what you're saying is we still have time?
We are, I would say, ahead of schedule, but wouldn't
Right.
want to jinx that by saying it out loud.
So am I to understand that $811,000 needs to be there for 2019 to make the first payment? And if so, is it physically possible to get the $83 million worth of development up and finished so we can collect the property tax?
So I'd have to ask John for clarification, but we've been working with finance, and that's 222 or 223 when we have to have it all in place.
Okay, so how are we making up the shortfall of $811,000 in 2019
On the,
on the $3.765 million payment?
all I can tell you is that we're working diligently to
Right.
increase the revenue by $83 million of new development.
Okay,
And we worked on a budget schedule of 2022 or 2023 to have that in place.
Like I said, I had understood it had to be by 2019, but I could be wrong because I'm
I
basing it on
believe it's
memory.
2022 or 23. Sorry, I don't have
Okay.
that directly.
I'm
in
going to
front
have
of
to review my files from 2015. And the total cost now, John, including the plaza, contingency fund, and any other overspends is $112.978 million.
Yes, your worship, it is, and that's figures as current as we have right now, which is right around now.
And that is barring no unforeseen circumstances from now until the completion?
Well, that'll be a question probably for Jack, because I really don't know what capital would have to come. I think he's indicated that he feels that they're in pretty good shape. But we're sort of on the back end after the money's spent, then we have to try to figure out how to pay for it. So this is what we know we have to pay for.
And Jack, correct me if I'm wrong, like I said, I'm going by notes here that I took. That does not include the $200,000 for public art, correct? Or does that also include the $200,000 for public art?
7.2 million has 200,000 of that is in that 7.2 million, correct?
Okay, so it's part of the 112. I'm just gonna round it up to $113 million. Sure.
Mhm.
All right. So we have to have a plan in place after year 15. Because obviously our borrowing or from our operations is gonna have to, an extra $250,000 over 15 years. So that's 2.5. So that's gonna be an extra $4 million on top of the 132. Okay.
Your worship,
If we don't have something in place.
yes, and there's going to be other opportunities that I'm sure will be explored.
Right.
Just the operations of the facility. The operating company is quite bullish about there are opportunities here, and I'm sure that the people working with them will be looking to see if there's opportunities for us to gather some of that.
All right, fantastic. And one last question. Depending on how council goes about it, we're at $44.3 million. And any shortfall or the potential risk on the $8.5 million, which is the $3.5 million sale of the ancillary land and the $5 million fundraiser. I'm not saying could be, but depending on whatever shortfall, and hopefully there's none, that could be added to the $44.3 million.
Your worship, that's right, and I think it's important for council to understand that because they're two big contributors, and right now, as I indicated, we don't have that fund that we're presuming that's going to happen.
Right.
Indications to this point are, today I don't have anything to worry about, but then I don't have the answer. I know that Mulligan's working very hard with the fundraising, and I know there's a lot of work being done on the ancillary land, so we'll
I
cross
know
our
it is.
fingers.
Like I said, I'm hoping that it's there. I just want to make sure I understand what the borrowing is going to be,
Perfect.
or potential borrowing. All right, thank you very much. Merci, Madame la Mairesse.
Thank you very much. Deputy Mayor Lawrence.
Oh, thank you, Worship. Just had a couple more questions, I guess, that are on the financial side. Just a bit confused. First of all, the $7.2 million contingency, that was approved by Council last year in March, I think, of 2016. So, Mr. Martin, am I right in assuming, from what I remember, that is part of our we've incorporated that into our present budget?
Yeah. Yes, that's in our 18 budget.
Right, so it's already there in the budget. It's not as if it's a new money that
Yes,
we're
you're
not
right.
aware of. Right,
Absolutely.
so it is money that's already been accounted for. Okay, that's great. And I'm a little bit, just the numbers, I think, Jack, I think maybe it was you who presented, we were talking about a $4.3 million expense for the plaza. But in a way, the numbers, I weren't sure they jive for. We did have earlier, I think, a number of $629,000 that is already, I believe, in the $91.5 million towards the plaza. Am I correct about that?
That's correct. That 629,000 was the credit that came out of the GMP because
Right.
they didn't have to build a plaza.
So, in as much as I know we owe that money, it is not actually in the $7.2 million contingency, isn't it, out of the 91.5 that gets swung over into the expense on the plaza? It seemed to appear in the $7.2 million contingency, but I thought it was already part of our original $91.5 million budget. Am I correct about that?
It's part.
Go ahead, Jack.
Rock, paper, scissors.
You go ahead.
Your worship, and I'd refer council, on the slide when I talked about the funding for the 8.7 million, one of the items we talked about there was that the credit from Bird for the plaza would be included as part of the payment of that extra cost.
Right. But given that it's already in the 91.5, my recollection is it's not part of the $7.2 million contingency, which I think appeared on a later slide when we looked at the numbers. You had a couple of numbers, and then the last one was, I think, $900,000 for other. So it didn't make sense. Like, for instance, the art is in that at $200,000. And
Right.
didn't we have soil mitigation in that
Yes,
contingency?
yes.
Because I think that came out as an extra expense in your report earlier on, and I thought that's not right because we've already covered it in the contingency. You know, it's part of our $7.2 million that's in the 2018 budget. So they didn't exactly jibe in my mind. Correct me if I'm wrong, or if you want to just dig into that a little bit.
No, Yes, Your Worship, we'll have a look at that and reconcile the numbers.
Yeah, because it came out as if we had this extra expense, but it's in the contingency, which is in our 18 budget. So,
But just on
Oh,
one
sure.
point of clarity.
Yeah,
though,
sorry.
In terms of calculating the 7.2 million, we didn't put in, I think, the original 3.66 million, which was the assumption that the plaza would cost. It was in at around 3 million, which took the 665,000 contribution out.
Right.
That came from the GMP. So it's in and out, but it's a matter on how you do the accounting, which is our accounting boys.
right, but, and whichever is true is fine by me, but it would be important for the media to know that is this an extra cost, or has it already been accounted for in our 18 budget, which I think it has. And to that point, then if the cost of the plaza is now at 4.3, and we had the presentation based on things that the public wanted and what council decided they wanted, in fact, we've only gone over by, am I right, by 2.7, because we had $630,000 in our original budget and we have a $1 million donation. So even though I know that the cost is 4.3, as a city, we've only increased our cost on that by $2.7 million. Am I right about that? Which is 4.3 minus 630 minus 1 million. Is that right?
Yes, Your Worship, I see what you're doing. I think that $1 million was there all along, so I mean, it had netted, so again, because of that, it's still going to be proportionally larger than it had been
Sure.
anticipated.
So
to
I
be.
understand that that's the cost of it, but what we've done, or my understanding was when we went through this, that we have increased our expense by $2.7 million because we had only budgeted $630,000 in the original PA, I think Jack called it, and then we received $1 million towards it. So that was a gift, a donation. So we've increased our cost by $2.7 million. Is that not correct? Yeah, I know it's 4.3, but our actual cost, because, well, the 6.3 was already there, part of our cost, but to say that it's additional cost doesn't make sense to me. It wasn't my understanding way back when.
But in calculating the 7.2 million, the $1 million credit was already in there, and the contribution was already in there to net that out to about a $2 million. So there's
that-
two ways to look at it. You
Okay.
have to go back to the basic, which is 3.66 million,
Right.
which was the premise of the 7.2 million.
Yeah.
With additions and subtractions in terms of contributions and credits,
Right.
against what it came in at 4.3. So the net difference between the two of them is the net difference between 4.3 and 3.66.
Okay, which is the $630,000 that we already had in our 91.5. So we've increased it by 2.7 million. Okay, I'm right. I'm okay about that. Just a couple of one more question I think I had. Just as a curiosity, the last time we had a tour of the downtown center, I think at that point there were over 100 tradesmen working in the building at that time. Where are we at this point? And maybe we could remind council and perhaps the public about how many of those tradespeople and subcontracted are A, local, B, New Brunswick wage earners in this whole endeavor. I mean, we've seen huge sort of ancillary building permits, but I'm just wondering about basic salaries that have been generated through this that we don't have in these numbers.
Well, I don't have the exact numbers with me, but I think they're north of 150 in there right now, like we went in today. Well, in excess of 80% of them are either local or New Brunswick, the bulk of them being local. And that makes just a lot of sense in terms of paying room and
Yep.
board and travel. So, to your point, the vast majority of all the tradespeople in there are local people, and the only ones that would not be local would be probably specialty.
And the last question I had, Your Worship, if you don't mind, has to do with the basins, the capture basins. I know we made a decision a while ago because, as you said, it expands the amount of property you can sell in Parcel B. And for me, it was a safety issue of having, at times, ponds full of water with children racing around. It seemed to be an issue. But was that was $2 million that we added by?
That was basically 2 million. It's once again still part, like, when we took a look at that 7.2, we've had additions and subtractions.
Yep.
So it was in there, and certainly it's more now. The impacted soil is basically what's driven the cost up.
Right.
So it was in, it's still in it. So, and it's an estimate at this point because it's a lump sum project. So it'll be somewhere between probably 1.5 and 2 million.
Okay. And so you had said that, I think, if I'm not mistaken, that at least, especially by virtue of Parcel B, it will add value in terms of the
Yes.
sale price in addition to tax revenue that we can glean from
Yes.
ensuring that that's all underground.
So irrespective, I mean, irrespective of what we get for the sale of the land, I know that we're looking for 3.5.
Yeah.
Yep.
If we had taken 20% of that land away, you would be taking whatever we get, 20% of the value of that off the price tag.
Okay, good. Thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Crossman.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mr. Martin, just a few quick questions. Thanks for getting the official paper copy, because after the last statements by the Deputy Mayor, I'm kind of confused on the finances of the whole thing now. I thought I had it all figured out, but now I'm sitting here going, wait, this was said, this wasn't said, and this was included and this wasn't included. So I don't know how the press is figuring this out. I don't know how citizens at home are figuring this out. But thank you, Mr. Martin and staff, for submitting this paperwork. Would have been nice to have earlier, but I understand you're under a time frame. Mr. Martin, you talked about many, I guess I'm going to say, deadlines on this. You've talked about opening the center in July of next year, or finishing it July of 2018, is that correct?
Yeah, sorry.
Nope.
Substantial completion will be at the end of June, and then the final payment September?
Substantial completion in July, and we would probably releasing some of the money, but the first concert would be in September.
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Martin, any idea on some sort of early completion date penalty or costs that the City of Moncton may have to incur if it's ahead of schedule?
Turn that to Jack. He's probably closer to that. I'm not aware of
At this point, talking to the contractor that's building it, which is Bird, while they're making good progress, they're basically at this point still saying that they're looking at a July finish, 2018.
Okay. So I just want to put it out there in case it's early. There could possibly be some sort of charge back to the city or some sort of early acceptance?
Your Worship, if substantial completion date changed, there would be some considerations that the city would have to make. There could be extra costs, but as Jack said, they're aware of that also, and right now the indications that I understand are is they plan to finish on schedule.
I believe our city solicitor would like to answer that.
Yeah, the project agreement does contemplate early completion, and the city would not be responsible for any kind of penalties or fees
great.
in that area.
Not good. Perfect. Thank you. Really appreciate that answer. That's a relief. Naming of the center. Who do I ask that question? Who do I direct that to?
I can try.
Okay. The presentation shows Center Moncton. Have we bought the naming rights for that center?
So that's just a working name at this point.
Okay.
That's all it is. The
Okay.
naming rights still remain with SMG.
So
Negotiate.
naming rights remain with SMG. So if
negotiate.
Molson Canadian wants to come in and name it, they would deal with SMG Group.
That's
all
correct.
funding, all bonuses would go to SMG Group through that naming.
That was part of our original agreement as having them on board.
Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate that. And Isabel, I'm not sure if this question is directed to you or not, but transportation for people coming down to the center to enjoy not only the plaza, but the center will be done with Kodiak Transpo?
As you know, there's a transportation dispersal plan which is getting ready and should be presented to council in the next couple of weeks. So all the details will be found in that plan. And then we'll be working over the next year on making sure the public is well aware of how to get to and from the facility and also where to park.
Okay, great. Another question on that. So I live in the north end of Moncton. I want to come down and have an afternoon skate. I jump on Kodiak Transpo. Do we know if skates are allowed on the bus? Do we know if hockey sticks are allowed on the bus?
Sorry.
Because I may not have any other way to get to that circle, that skating circle, without transportation.
Those things are all going to be taken into account into that all-encompassing transportation dispersal plan.
Okay, I look forward to the answer on that one. Great, thank you. That's all I had. Thank you.
I believe that our city manager just has a clarification on one item there.
Yeah, so thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Crossman for the transportation plan that will be presented. I believe we're looking at a mid-June presentation to council, so just to make sure we're clear on the dates. Yeah, thanks.
Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Your Worship. First of all, I want to thank all the staff who've worked on this report, all the different departments that are involved, and giving us an update, a current update of where we stand in all areas, and answers a lot of our questions, obviously, and probably creates a lot of questions at the same time, but at least we've got the documents in front of us, and I think we all will look forward to studying it and learning more about it. I'd like to carry on the thought that Deputy Mayor Lawrence was discussing a while ago. One of the reasons, I guess I'll look at Jack in this situation, at Plaza, it appears to have gone up. Obviously, the public consultation, people asked for this and that, and the other thing, we added it all, but really the retention system was driven by staff because it made a lot of sense and came to council and we improved. That's where a lot of the cost, it's underground. It'll only be seen on a major rain event, and it'll be seen, but it'll be in usage. But the reality is, the land on the east side of the street, which we're going to be selling at some point, there was going to be a pond have to appear there. 20% of the land would have been really unusable for any kind of development. So the reality here is that the land has gone up in value by 20% approximately, whatever price we're going to be getting for it. I mean, it's obviously, you're open to bids right now. But then the developer, the project they're going to put in this land, they have 20% more land to build a larger development or a larger project. At the end of the day, that project not only will give us more money when we sell the land, but for the next 30 years, 15, 30 years of our life cycle here that we're looking at, we're going to realize a lot more in property tax revenue off that piece of land because of that, because of our, I think, being very forward thinking in our planning here. Like you say, you see this in a lot of large cities. I know if you go to Las Vegas, you always wonder, it's a desert, where's the water? It's all under the city, that's where it is. And I think it's tremendous planning, and it's going to give us a lot more back in tax revenue over the next 30 years. And that's where I see the benefit of what you're doing here. And the revenue will, I think, far outweigh the initial cost. Yeah, we've got the cost up front, but we're going to have the benefit of the tax revenues from the development, and the developer will be a lot happier. Obviously, he'll have more to work with at the same time. So I'm looking forward to it. I think you're doing some great things. I understand that the cafe is going to be developed after the actual opening. And rather than selling that piece of land, I believe we're going to be leasing it, and so that's another source of revenue that'll be coming back to us over the next 30 years. That is really up in the air right now, obviously, but there'll be a plan in place for that. So I thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you to everyone. I missed John last time in my thank yous, but great presentation. It's fabulous to get a real update like this. We've been talking about it for years and years, and lots of moving pieces, but the proof is in the pudding. It's down there on Main Street. So we can move along now.